Look, I never really meant for this to happen. But one day I found myself here at the Tybee Church, and I was up here talking. And I remember Gordo asked me one night, he says, well, he told me, he says, we'd really like for you to come to our church and talk to us. And I remember I said, about what? And he said, well, just come down there and talk to us. And so many things have changed in my life since then. I had no idea what was going on in my life right then at that time. I knew I wasn't really happy with my life the way it was at the time, and I knew that I had just sort of said, if you want to change, you can change. Everything don't have to be this way no more. I'm good. I'm going to just drift and see where it goes. And so I find myself here this morning at the Tybee Church again. And it is such a great honor to be in a church, to be asked to speak in a place of worship, because I know when I go to where I go to get my nourishment, sometimes I really need my nourishment. And so I understand what a great honor it is to be asked to speak in a church. And I tell you, I've been asked to speak at a lot of them now, and I'm so grateful for that. I go to a place called Unity of Savannah. I don't know, I know some of you have heard of Unity. It's just, they're just people. They're just good people just like y'all are. And our minister over there, he takes this prayer. It's called the prayer of protection. And he does this really cool thing with it at the end of church every day, every Sunday. We all get together in a circle and we sing this song called the Peace Song. And at the end of it, Dale says, and he takes this from this prayer called the prayer of protection. He says, the light of God surrounds us. And everybody yells out, I am the light of God. And then he says, the love of God enfolds us. And we all yell out, I am the love of God. And then he says, the power of God protects us. And what do we say? Yes. And then he says, the presence of God watches over us. The presence. Yes. How does that feel to say that? Let's try that again. I want to try that again. I'm going to play Dale's part, and you guys be the congregation, okay? The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. The first time I went to Unity and we did that, it kind of freaked me out a little bit, I'll be honest with you. So if you feel weird saying that, I felt weird the first time I said that. I wasn't quite sure what was going on, and I was kind of looking around to see if anybody was looking at me, or if I was about to get struck by lightning or something. Wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. What happened is I fully enveloped those affirmations. I fully enveloped those affirmations in my meditations at night, in the stillness, and I know that. And that is why these affirmations, that's why I'm here this morning. Because I am the light of God. I am the love of God. I am the power of God, and I am the presence of God. Now, it's very helpful that I know myself and I know these things about myself, but what's even more important is that I know this about you. See? I know this about you. Okay? That's what's more important. When we come into the realization, my talk, by the way, is titled Self-Realization. I should probably tell you that. When we realize that we are not separate from God, but that we are connected to God, that we are a part of God, this is self-realization. When we realize that there is no self, that the self is a part of everything else, this is the actual self-realization. This is what is called self-realization. We were all created by the Creator, and we are all of the Creator. We all have a purpose, a reason for being here, and we all have what we need in order to carry out that purpose. In this way, we are all one. We are all of us God. We are all the creations of God, and we can use the universal laws to help us. God made the universal laws too. The tools we use were made by God. Our purpose was given to us by God. We were created by God. God is omnipresent. God is omniscient. God is everywhere. There is nothing that isn't God. There's no place that isn't sacred. Self-realization. I'm a part of this big whole. One of the co-founders of the Unity Church, his name was Charles Fillmore, and Charles wrote a lot. He wrote a lot, and I was going through one of his books not long ago that's called The Dynamics of Living. It's a pretty good book. And Charles says, spirit, now y'all know that's my favorite word. Me and Charles, we like the same words. Spirit in man is the I am, the individuality. The individuality is the true self, that which is undivided from God. Our spiritual identity, the God part of us. Charles knew that he had a God part inside of him. And he knew that you had a God part inside of you, and he knew that we're all connected. From the book of St. John, chapter 10, we had an interesting scene going on. There was a little conflict happening. And I'd like to read a little bit of that. Jesus says, I and my Father are one. Then the Jews took up stones to stone him. Jesus answered them, many good works I have shown you from my Father. For which of those works do you stone me? The Jews answered him, saying, for a good work we stone you not, but for blasphemy, and because that thou, being a man, makest thyself God. Jesus said, is it not written in your law that I said, ye are gods? Jesus goes on to say, if he called them gods unto whom the word of God came, and the scripture cannot be broken, say ye of him whom the Father hath sanctified and sent into the world, thou blasphemest, because I said, I am the Son of God? If I do not the works of my Father, believe me not. But if I do, though you believe not me, believe the works, that ye may know and believe that the Father is in me, and I in him. Jesus said that we are God's. He said it was written in the scripture. And he said it over and over again. When I began to study spirituality for the first time, it was back in the 1980s, and I was living over in Albany, Georgia, and I grew up over there in a church. And the way I had been brought up in church, after a while, I started thinking that God and Santa Claus must be real close. Because the way they had this thing set up was there was somebody up in the sky in a place called heaven, and there was another guy over at the North Pole, and they were judging everything I did and everything I thought and everywhere I went and everything I wanted to do, and I couldn't get away from them. You know, if I went in my room and went in the closet and closed the door, they're still there. But, you know, the place that I went was, or the place that my mother took me to church was so judgmental. They scared me half to death with this God thing. And I don't know about you, but I mean, you know, when you're a teenager, you're going through, you know, you're kind of growing up and everything, you know, and you're going through things. And there was a point to where it seemed like everything that they said God wanted me to do was nothing like what I had in mind. You know? It was nothing like I had in mind. I know you can't relate to that, right? So I just stopped going to church, and I went off on my own. But when I got introduced to spirituality later on in my life, and I began to study the scriptures, not just the Bible, but other scriptures as well. I began to study anything that anybody said was spiritual or anything that would help me. I read it. And at some point in my studies, because, see, you can read all the books you want to. You can go to any of the churches or the synagogues or any of the Zen centers. You can go anywhere you want to go. But what you need to know is how you feel and what resonates with you. What is true for you is what you need to know. You don't need to know what's true for me. Okay? That don't have nothing to do with it. I came to the understanding that within myself, I couldn't understand anything other than God is all, and all is God. God is all, and all is God. If anything in the world is God, then everything in the world has to be God. And I'm going to tell you straight up, I knew that was true. I knew it was what resonated with me, but I did not understand it, because there's a lot of things that happen in the world that I think are bad. There's a lot of things that happen in the world that I think are evil, that I think are hurtful. The world can be a difficult place to navigate through, and I didn't understand it at first. It took a little while. But I did know from then on that even though something looked to me as if it was bad, that it couldn't be, because it was God. I knew that everything was God. Let's imagine the ocean. A big ocean. Should be easy for you folks. I'm going to be in North Carolina this next week. I don't know if they know what the ocean looks like. I might take a picture or something with me. This is what it looks like in the water. So the ocean The ocean is made up of just numerous waves, little waves. You point at the millions of little waves and you say, that is the ocean. If I take a cup and I hand it to you and I say, bring me some ocean water in this cup, which wave do you go to? Is there a particular wave that you're going to try to get? No. And that's exactly how I see God. I see everything as the ocean, and everything in the ocean, every wave in the ocean is God. Any one of them is just as much God as any of the other ones. The intelligence that created the human eye not to mention the rest of creation, could not possibly make a mistake. Think about that, really. The scientists don't have anything that is even remotely in the ballpark of a human eye. How it, the physics and the space and how fast and how it gets the light, and I mean, there's nothing even remotely close to the human eyeball. Whatever made that doesn't make mistakes. Whatever made you, don't make mistakes, buddy. Hear me now. And I want to tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a little boy. Whenever his parents would take him to a toy store, he was lucky enough to have parents. And whenever they would take him to a toy store, he would always choose to get a plastic guitar. Every time. The little boy began to grow up. A couple of years went by, and he had a few of those plastic toy guitars. And when he got to be about 8 years old, he went to his father and he said, "Dad, I want a real one now. I want a real one." There was a little bit of a problem because the kid had seen The Who on TV. And he came up with this idea that whenever he got a new plastic toy guitar, he could go out on his mom and dad's back porch where he gave his concerts all the time, and he could do some Pete Townsend on the old plastic guitar that was being replaced with the new plastic guitar. So Dad was a little nervous. So the kid had some convincing to do and some explaining to do, and he says, "Dad, look, I know those are toys, and I know I'm asking, and these things." And so Dad bought his son a learner guitar, little learner guitar, took him down to the music store, and got him some music lessons. So the kid liked the music lessons so much that 6 months later, the boy's father went out and bought him a real guitar. And the kid got to take music lessons not only on Saturday morning, but on Wednesday after school too, because one lesson a week was not nearly enough. You see, the kid would go to his music lesson on Saturday morning, come home, and by Saturday afternoon, he already had that down. And so he was going to have to wait an entire week. That's not going to work. So he got to go more often. And the little boy had a friend who would come over, and he would come home from his lesson, and he would teach his friend what he had learned, and they sort of kind of learned how to play together. And by the time they got into high school, throughout the years, they came up with a band. They had a band when they were in high school, and they traveled around and played all these places with the high school band teacher and the marching band for the high school and everything. It was amazing, but they were in high school, and they got the big head, and they got to where they were partying more than they were playing, and so they wrecked everything. And so the little boy now, he's out of high school, and he just goes to work at a regular job, and he only plays at home at night and on the weekends and when he has spare time. Until one day he finds himself living in Atlanta, Georgia, through a series of events that was just a total mistake. And he's got a roommate, and the roommate says to him, "You need to come with me tonight and see my brother play music." And so the guy says, "Okay, I'll go with you." So they went out downtown, and the roommate introduced the boy to his brother, who was a local musician, and there was a conversation had, and the next thing you know, it came out that the roommate's brother was a singer-songwriter and a professional musician, and played all over the country. Are y'all still with me? Okay, so sometimes I get a little going but I'm staying on point. So the professional singer-songwriter says to the boy, he says, "You should come here on Sunday nights. They have a thing called open mic, and they give you 15 minutes, and you can do whatever you want." So the boy went directly home and wrote 3 songs and showed back up at the open mic and played. And then the next Sunday night, he showed up again and he played. And the next Sunday night, he showed up again and he played. And then he was a pro at it. And he met some other people that were at this open mic. And they told him about some other open mics that they went to. It turns out there was just a whole bunch of these people that went around to different open mics. Atlanta's a big city. A lot of people, they got a lot of stuff going on there. So you show up at an open mic, there might be 50 or 60 people that are signing up and trying to get in and wanting to play. And it's a big thing, you know. And so the boy started playing around in Atlanta and going to open mics all the time, and he got some gigs of his own. But the boy had a little bit of a problem that was going on in his life. You see, he had a string of bad relationships, really bad, like embarrassing bad. Like, I'll never be like that, but then he was bad, right? He'd already been in drug rehab to dry out twice in his life, and he was still in his early 20s. Yeah, a lot of issues. And he met a girl at an open mic, and he fell in love, and they moved in together, and he bought her a ring, and 6 months later, she spit him out. And he was destroyed. And he thought his life was over. You see, the boy spent his entire life looking for something or some person that would make him okay. He was always reaching out and pulling in. He was very needy. He was very desperate. He was very wanting. He was pathetic. But he held on to playing the open mics. He held on to doing his gigs. And one night, he was in his room. He was renting a room with some people. And he was playing his guitar. And he took his guitar across the room and he set it in the corner. And he walked back over and he sat down on the bed. And he looked up and he saw his guitar. And his guitar was looking at him. And he was looking at his guitar. And his guitar was looking at him. And suddenly, over this young man came a flood, a hurricane, a wave suddenly passed through this young man. The light bulb went off. There were fireworks. And he looked at his guitar and he said, "That is what I have inside of me that nobody can take away. I got it." Now this guy I'm telling you about, if you haven't figured it out, is me. I'm sure you figured that out already by now. And my life changed instantly, right there. I had what is called a self-realization, a huge, gigantic spiritual awakening. And I knew instantly within seconds that God made me. God gave me my love, my talent, and my enthusiasm for music on purpose. And I couldn't find anything else in the world that looked even remotely appealing to me. And I was 25. I'd been playing music all my life. And I ran to the phone and I called my best friend and I said, "David, I'm a musician." And he was really quiet. Because David already knew. Everybody else already knew. I didn't know. He hasn't been back to rehab since. He hasn't had a long string of terrible relationships since. His life changed because he realized that he had something inside of him that was a God part. The God part. Nobody can hurt it. Nobody can take it away. And this is what I'm here this morning to tell you, each and every person in this room, you have a God part. You have something inside of you that nobody can take away. We're taught a lot of times in life how things are and how things are supposed to be and what we should do and what we ought to do and yada, 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 yada. I tell you to follow your enthusiasm. Do what you want to do. It's like a flashlight shining. Go this way. You know? If it's a mistake, then it's a mistake. You learn from it. Wisdom. My favorite spiritual teacher says you can only gain wisdom through actual life experience. That means put on your pads, put on your helmet, and get out on the field and get after somebody, right? And then you will gain wisdom. So my message is that you are the power, the love, the light, and the presence of God. You are a spirit. You were created by the universe. And if you are here, then you have a purpose for being here. People tell me all the time, "Oh, no, I don't really do anything. Oh, no, I don't really have any talents." I'm not going to listen to that because I know better. Why would the universe put you here and give you a purpose and then not support you? Would you be given a hammer and no nails, a paintbrush and no paint? The universe does not work that way. The truth is that you can create the life you want, you can be what you want, and do what you want, and the universe wants you to have what it is that you want.